येत् शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवरभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणेश्वरं गुरुवरं योगासनाध्यासितं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रं यहमहमिति साक्षादात्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामच्युतव पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्. We will commence the Friday Atmavicharam by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham and contemplating on it by his abundant grace. And then we will be reading his Upadesham from the book Ramana Answers, Self-Enquiry 1900 to 1950, a compilation of all the answers given by Bhagavan on the subject matter of Atmavichara, self-enquiry, between 1900 to 1950. This wonderful compilation has been done by our founder, President Sri A.R. Natarajan ji. Today we will be looking at the question answers between devotee and Bhagavan, starting from question number 57 to 60. After this, we will meditate by his abundant grace on the contemplate on the meaning, and then have a Atmavichara, 20 minutes Atmavichara session. After that, our President Sarada Akka would be talking about Atmavichara as it has been contemplated by Ganapati Muni based on Bhagavan's answers to many devotees and captured in the Sanskrit book of Ramana Gita. And then finally, we would have the concluding prayers to Bhagavan. Today we are going to look at question number 57 to 60, and these are very much connected question and answers. And after having read these question answers, we will look at Bhagavan's clear explanation to the details what he has given here in talk number 248 and 249. The questioner asks, concentrate on the self, you say, how to do it? The question is, concentrate on the self, you say, how to do it? Bhagavan, if that is solved, everything else is solved. The question is, concentrate on the self. Bhagavan, the devotee asks, You say, how to do it? Bhagavan says, if that is solved, everything else is solved. Devotee then asks, know thyself, you say. How to know the self? Bhagavan, you now know that you are the body. Devotee, Raja Yoga realizes through the body and senses. Sri Bhagavan advises realization by thinking. This is Gnana Yoga. Bhagavan, how can you think without the body? Devotee, then what is realization? Realization is to get rid of the delusion that you have not realized. These are the 4 question and answers. In the first question, which is a common thing for all aspirant of truth, is what should I do to realize the truth? The most common question that we get is what is the action that we need to take? What we don't see with that question, or we don't realize with that question, is that we identified ourselves with this body. That means we have given the non-self the attribute of the self as oneself. And therefore, there is a very clear identification that I can do something with this, so what should I do? So this is why Bhagavan says, if you solve that, everything else is solved. And the questioner asks, you say, then know thyself. How is one to know the self? Bhagavan says, like right now you know the body. Like that, you should know your own self. So he says, you now know that you are the body. Meaning, what does it mean? There is absolutely no doubt right now that this identification with the body, I don't identify myself with any other body that I see. I identify very clearly with this body, and therefore there is such a clarity. There is absolutely no doubt. So Bhagavan is saying that kind of clarity is to be known, is to be got about the self. That is the way we have to approach. Then, should I get rid of this body which is creating, to whom I have given the attribute of the self? Then Bhagavan, the questioner himself, has put this question. Raja Yoga realizes through the body and senses. Sri Bhagavan advises realization by thinking. This is Gnana Yoga. Bhagavan says, how can you think without the body? So body is not an hindrance. It is an opportunity to contemplate on the reality. Something has raised. The body is not saying I. The body is not an hindrance. It is a medium of thinking. It's an instrument. But something rises in between the self and the body, says Bhagavan, which causes all the delusion. So the body is not a hindrance. So he asks, how can you think without the body? When there is no body, as we see in the sleep, there is no thinking in the deep sleep. So it is impossible to know the truth without that instrument either. So it is not a hindrance, says Bhagavan here, but it is a way through which we can realize the truth. And finally, when the questioner asks, then what is realization? Bhagavan says, realization is to get rid of the delusion that you have not realized. So this knowledge that I have not realized is the hindrance that is causing all the problem. And how does it rise? It rises in the form of how to do it, or what should I do. It rises in the form of how to know. It rises in the form of divisions. This is Raja Yoga, this is Karma Yoga, and rises in the form of uncertainty that I have not realized. This is what Bhagavan goes on to say, that if that is solved, if that is solved in the sense what? If that is the non self is no more given, that thoughts that rise in continuously, if that thought based life is not given any reality, and if one can get back to the source of the thought at every time, then one realizes that one is the truth, and then the delusion will go away. So Bhagavan goes on to say how it has to be done. In this talk 248 and 249, he says very clearly that uh, I'll just read out the two talks. So in the talk number 248, he gives a very clear picture what is the difference between a gnani and an agnani. In the 249, he gives what is the problem the agnani faces, due to which, though the knowledge we have got, is or the truth we have understood doesn't sink, become one with us, and what is the remedy towards it. So that is very important. So we look at the two talks. Talk number 248, Bhagavan says, the Gnani says, I am the body. The Agnani says, I am the body. What is the difference? I am is the truth. The body is the limitation. The Gnani limits the the Agnani limits the I to the body. I remains independent of the body in sleep. The same I is now in the wakeful state. Though imagined to be within the body, I is without the body. The wrong notion is not I am the body. The wrong notion is not I am the body. I say so. The body is insentient and cannot say so. The mistake lies in thinking that I is what I is not. I is not insentient. I cannot be the inert body. The body's movements are confounded with I, and misery is the result. I repeat, the body's movements are confounded with I, and misery is the result. Whether the body works or not, I remains free and happy. The Ajnani's I is the body only. That is the whole error. The Gnani's I includes the body and everything else. Clearly, some intermediate entity arises and gives rise to the confusion. So, in an Agnani, some intermediate entity arises and gives this confusion, says Bhagavan. Mr. Navaitinath Iyer, a lawyer, asked, if the Gnani says, I am the body, what happens to him in death? Maharshi, he does not identify himself with the body even now, devotee. But you said just before that, the Gnani says, everything apart from I for him. If the body falls away, there is no loss for the I. The I remains the same. If the body feels dead, let it rise the question. Being inert, it cannot. I never dies and does not ask the question. Who then dies? Shastras for him, Bhagavan. Yes, quite so. Death is only a thought and nothing more. He who thinks rises trouble. Let the thinker tell us what happens to him in death. The real I is silent. One should not think, I am this, I am not that. To say this or that is wrong. They are also limitations. Only I am is the truth. Silence is I. If one thinks I am this, another thinks I am this, and so on. There is a clash of thoughts, and so many religions are the result. The truth remains as it is, not affected by any statements, conflicting or otherwise. Devotee. What is death? Is it not the falling away of the body? Maharshi. Do you not desire it in sleep? What goes wrong then? Devotee. But I know I shall wake up. Maharshi. Yes, thought again. There is the preceding thought, I shall wake up. Thoughts rule the life. Freedom from thought is one's true nature, bliss. So Bhagavan says here, all delusions are only because of thought, and the freedom from it is the way. Even though we understand this truth, Bhagavan goes on to say what causes us not to register it and how to get around it. In talk number 249, Bhagavan says, ignorance, ajnana, is of two kinds: forgetfulness of the self, obstruction to the knowledge of the self. So the forgetfulness, if we don't know what is the truth and we forget it, that is also an ignorance. Then the obstruction, some obstruction which doesn't make us know the self is also there. So Bhagavan gives remedy to that. Aids are meant for eradicating thoughts. These thoughts are the remanifestation of predispositions remaining in seed form. They give rise to the diversity from which all troubles arise. These aids are hearing the truth from the Master, Shravana, etc. The effects of Shravana may be immediate and the disciple realizes the truth all at once. This can happen only for the well advanced disciple. Otherwise, the disciple feels that he is unable to realize the truth, even after repeatedly hearing it. What is it due to? Impurities in his mind, ignorance, doubt, and wrong identity, or the obstacles to be removed? A. To remove the ignorance completely, he has to hear the truth repeatedly until his knowledge of the subject matter becomes perfect. B. To remove doubts, he must reflect on what he has heard. Ultimately, his knowledge will be free from doubts of any kind. C. To remove the wrong identity of the self with the non self, such as the body, the senses, the mind, or the intellect, his mind must become one pointed. All these things accomplished, the obstacles are at an end and the samadhi results. That is, peace reigns. Some say that one should never cease to engage in hearing, reflection, and one-pointedness. These are not fulfilled by reading books, but only by continued practice to keep the mind withdrawn. The aspirant may be Kritopasaka or Akritopasaka. The farmer is fit to realize the self even with the slightest stimulus. Only some little doubts stand in his way. It is easily removed if he hears the truth once from the Master. Immediately he gains the Samadhi state. It is presumed that he had already completed Shravana, reflections, etc. in previous births. They are now no more necessary for him. For the others, all these aids are necessary. For him, doubts crop up even after repeated hearing. Therefore, he must not give up aids until he gains the samadhi state. Shravana removes the illusion of the self being one with the body, etc. Reflection makes it clear that knowledge is self. One pointedness reveals the self as being infinite and blissful. The self is infinite and blissful, Bhagavan says, and it is the thought which makes it finite and troublesome or it bewilders us. So, to get rid of the thought and to reach that state of infiniteness or the blissfulness, be free of thoughts, Bhagavan has given us the Atmavitara, wherein he asks no matter what kind of thoughts rise within us, no matter whether it is good, bad, ugly, or even spiritual, we should diligently inquire to whom is this thought. And repeatedly, the answer would be that this thought has arisen to me. And thereupon, we should inquire, who am I? What do I refer to as I? Or where does this I thought rises within me? When we trace the source to the source of the thought, then and there we reach the samadhi, the blissful infinite self. And as Bhagavan says, this clarity has to be very, very much there after having listened to the truth. And then it should be clearly reflected that the thoughts always create delusions and bewilderness and removes us from the blissful state of silence of the self. And therefore, to get rid of the thought is the best course to gain, to experience samadhi or the self. That should be understood. And then the one pointedness is achieved by repeated practice, says Bhagavan, until the samadhi results. So, Bhagavan, with his immense grace, has condensed the three steps into the Atma Vichara for us and made us to make use of every movement, every divisions that rise in the form of thoughts as an opportunity to get back to the undivided, infinite, blissful self with vichara. And with repeated practice, Bhagavan assures that all the delusions, all the ignorance causing thoughts will be gone, and the self alone will be realized as the one truth shining forever. With the immense grace of Bhagavan, for the next 20 minutes, let us do Atma Vichara.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining is the self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we in this part of the satsang are meditating on the chapter on self-enquiry, Atmavitara. And Bhagavan has defined for us what is Atmavichara. He has said it is tracing the I thought to its source. And he has also told us what is the significance of Atmavichara. He has said, Phalana abadhis soyam asti netodhikam phalam. There is no fruit greater than the fruit of the practice of self-enquiry. And yes, clarified that while we may get marvelous achievements, we may be able to achieve marvelous heights and get visions perhaps even in the spiritual path, adbhutas siddhayas sadhya. There could be marvelous powers and achievements which we reach, which we attain to by practice of other methods, other means. Upayantara taschaya, antara, other upayas, other means, other plans. But even after attaining those, ta praptopi bhavati ante vicharena eva nirvritaha. Only by vichara, only by atma vichara can freedom, total freedom, can liberation be attained. So having said this, Kashni says, okay, if it is only self-enquiry which can liberate us, then which of us is capable of doing this self-enquiry? Can everyone take up self-enquiry? In a way, he is asking this question. So, he says, Etasyatma vicharasya prahuh kamadhikarinam adhikarasya sampatti kim jnatum shakyate swayam etasyatma vicharasya prahuh kamadhikarinam. Who is an adhikari? Who is fit to practice this self-enquiry? Adhikarasya sampatti kim jnatum shakyate swayam. And is it possible for one to understand or recognize himself or herself to be fit to practice self-enquiry? Can I know that I am ready to practice self-enquiry? Because if I do not know, then I may not start the practice. So will I know? And what are the prerequisites? What are the conditions? Are there any? Is there a qualification for the practice of self-enquiry? This is the question posed by Karshni. We may say that perhaps in later years, Bhagavan relented even on these criteria which he has given over here. Or in another sense, we may say that these criteria are very much present in anyone who is attracted to self-enquiry. Therefore, it is quite natural for Bhagavan to have prescribed these. Bhagavan says, Bhagavanuvacha upasanadibhi shuddham prajjanma sukritena va drishtadosham mano yasya sharire vishayeshu cha. He says that due to the strength of practice, due to the strength of pure practice, upasanadibhi shuddham, or because of the merits of previous lives, one may attain fitness to pursue self-enquiry. One may get readiness to pursue self-enquiry. Prajjanma sukritena va. because of the merits accrued in earlier lives. Sometimes we may find that we are not at all qualified in one sense to have been brought to self-enquiry. Bhagavan says very sweetly in his Arunachala Padikam, out of all creatures in this world, what have you gained by choosing me? Out of all creatures in the world, what did you gain by choosing me? ஊழியில் வாழும் மாக்களில் என்பால் ஊதியம் யாது நீ பெற்றாய். What did you get by choosing me? And I feel, Bhagavan says, I feel ashamed. Even to praise you, I feel so little. I wonder how is it that your grace has chosen me and made me your own. And in a Hindi translation of this, very sweetly the poet says, Apnaya apna kehne ka diya mujhe adhikar. You have not only made me your own, you have given me the freedom, the right to say, oh, Ramana is mine. So, how did it happen? How can I say, I am attracted to self-enquiry? I would like to practice self-enquiry. How does this come about in one's life? This great Sukrita, says Bhagavan. It's a great blessing because he has already told us that it is the highest good. The practice of self-enquiry leads to the highest good. So, when that is the case, one who is practicing self enquiry is obviously blessed, extremely blessed. We cannot even gauge the extent to which we are blessed in having come to the practice of self enquiry. So, sometimes one wonders how is it that it has been possible? Muruganar Swami often says there are queue of people standing to reach this state, O Ramana. Such a long queue is there, and yet you called me and you opened out this path and the secret to me. What can I say? How can I offer my gratitude? In what way can I give recompense for this great love of yours? So, Bhagavan is saying here that perhaps if we feel that I don't seem to deserve this at all, then maybe there was some merit in previous lives, some merit unknown to us. Or perhaps in this birth itself, one has given oneself to serious practice of the seeking of self-knowledge. How does one know, or what is the result of this sukrita? The result of this blessing is, says Bhagavan, drishtadosham mano yasya. There is a dosha drishti which arises in the mind. A dosha means one finds fault, one has dislike, distaste, one does not like something. So, the dislike, the perception of or the attitude of dislike arising in the mind towards what? Sharire Vishayeshu cha. There is a sense of distaste which arises in the mind towards all sense experiences and towards the body itself, towards the pandering of the body. When such distaste arises, says Bhagavan, one becomes fit to practice self-enquiry. Why does he say this? And he actually continues, Manasacharato yasya vishayeshwaruchirbhrisham. Manasacharato yasya vishayeshu aruchirbhrisham. If the mind moves among the sense objects, if the mind moves in the objects, Vishayeshu, when the mind moves in objects, there is aruchi. There is aruchi, there is distaste, says Bhagavan. There is no inclination to indulge in objective experience. Dehe cha nitya, dehe cha nityata buddhe, buddhihi tam prahuradhikarinam. Dehe cha anityata buddhihi. And one realizes that the body is anitya, it is transient, it is impermanent, anitya, impermanent. So every time the mind arises in the form of a thought, when one remembers, this thought pertains to a body identity, to my identity as a body. So, what is the use of having this thought when it is connected to the body? And what is this body? This body is anitya. It is impermanent. From moment to moment, it is changing. I do not have a single continuous bodily experience in my life. None of us can have it. We have had different bodily experiences from the very moment we were conceived in the mother's womb right until this moment. So, whenever the mind moves towards the thought that I am this body, if the thought, counter thought arises that this is impermanent, this is not my true nature, then what use is indulging in objective experiences through this body that pertain only to the body? When such thoughts start coming up in our mind, Bhagavan says, we have the ripeness to start the pursuit of self-enquiry. Because Bhagavan has said in Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham that if one wants to get across the river of samsara, if one wants to cross this sea of bondage, riding on body identity, it is like trying to cross it riding on a crocodile. It will swallow us up. So, the very question, who am I, arises only because we understand that this body cannot be I. Otherwise, why would we ask, who am I? So, the moment we have asked ourselves, who am I, it is already clear that we have understood the body is not I. That understanding may not be steady. It may not be intense. It may not be continuous. But if the question, who am I, has arisen in us, we have already established within our own minds the clarity. Who am I? Any one of us who asks ourselves this question, who am I, is already ready because we have already understood that the body is not I. But here Bhagavan is indicating that we could work on strengthening this distaste for objective experiences. We could work on strengthening the understanding that the body is not I. This would be a great support for our self-enquiry. That is what Bhagavan means when he says readiness is there. Actually, there is an incident which I read recently that there were some dogs in the ashram who were just sitting at Bhagavan's feet all the time. And then two peacocks were also brought there one day, and those peacocks flew away from Bhagavan's presence and sat on a tree top or on perch somewhere else. They were brought again and again, and they kept flying away. Then Bhagavan remarked, they are not yet ready to stay. So the mind, if it is moving away from inquiry again and again, we understand that our mind is not yet ready to stay in the self. So, we must then build our dispassion, vairagya, which is distaste for worldly objects. And because where does the mind move to? Where does thought move to? Thought is movement, mental movement. Where does it move to? It moves only to an object. The grasping of an object by the mind is thought. Why would the mind grasp an object unless it is interested in that object? So long as there is interest in any object, mind will move. Bhagavan is kind and says we can bring it back. Every time it moves, we can bring it back to the source by asking ourselves, for whom is this thought? It is for me. Who am I? So when I ask myself, for whom is this thought, I recognize that this seeking of objects is nothing but a mere thought. It's only a thought. There is no reality in it beyond that. So when I remind myself about that, automatically there is a certain distaste towards this movement. Because of the distaste only, I am asking myself, for whom is this thought? Why this thinking? So for whom is this thought? It is for me. So when I answer that, I am already having a distaste for the thought, for the object. So I have already crossed the first qualifying round. Next, when I ask myself, who am I have understood. I am not holding on to I am the body idea, but I am ready to question it. I am ready to uproot it by asking myself, who am I? So we are crossing over the second qualifying round and ready to dive into the self. That's why Bhagavan has made us ready. He makes us ready every time we practice. And he strengthens our readiness. So Bhagavan says that if we want to know whether we ourselves are progressing or are getting closer to enjoying the fullness of the fruits of self-inquiry, then it can be known through Dehe Nashwarata Buddhair Vairagyad Vishayeshu Cha Etabhyameva Lingabhyam Ngeya Swasyadhikarita. When we find that we are no longer very much interested in things of the world, in objective experiences, they cease to excite us, they cease to make us wonder, they cease to make us worry, because we are no longer touched by them. Then, and also when we recognize more and more that this changing body cannot be I, it cannot be I. When this thought comes back to us and draws us again and again towards the source, obviously we may say that we are getting more and more ready to dive into the source and remain over there. Of course, the grace of Bhagavan is so immense that he says this readiness for self-inquiry comes by the very practice of self-inquiry. This I will conclude with an incident which happened in the presence of Annamalai Swami. Annamalai Swami was asked, Swami, if we are not ready to perform, if we are not ready to practice self-inquiry, if we don't have the readiness, should we practice something else? Should we practice some other sadhana? Some other spiritual practice? Should we begin with and then come to self-inquiry? Then Annamalai Swami said, see, if you want to learn to play the violin, when you start learning to play the violin, it may be difficult. It's not easy. No art is easy to master. It doesn't come in a day. So when you start finding it difficult, what should you do? Should you shift to a veena playing instead, to playing the veena instead? You may shift to playing the veena, but will playing the veena help you to master the violin? So if you want to master the violin, keep at it. Keep at it. Recognize that that is the answer. And it is supplementary and complementary. The more we practice self inquiry, the more our longing to go within becomes stronger and stronger. And obviously, thoughts of the external world, the external goals will start diminishing. And the thought of the body also will start diminishing. So it is in a way important that whether we think we are fit or not, we try to practice. And when we try to practice, we will become fit. That is the promise of the grace. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
अपरसच्चित् सुखपरिदशे यस्योर्मिमात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरम् चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि. Namo Ramana. Thank you. Thank you.
Namo